Hello people, Dark Souls 3 review. Let me explain Dark Soul. A drug addict tastes a drug. He loves it. Then after some time he gets another kind of drug. He knows it's worse than the previous drug, but he still feels happy about it. Few years later he tastes the final drug and it's killing him. He know that it's killing him, but he still loves it. That's how I feel about Dark Souls franchise, and Dark Souls 3 is unfortunately the killing drug in this sentence. Let's begin. Well, once you get consumed by the world of Dark Souls, you will never look at the games like you did before Dark Souls. That sentence still applies for Dark Souls 3 too. From Software made, well, a great game again. Is it the best Dark Souls ever? No. But it's for sure the most fluent and most beautiful Dark Souls ever. I'm doing this review along with Ashes of Ariandel and the Ringed City DLCs. First section, as usual, we have the story. Lore of Dark Souls 3 is heavily connected with two previous games, especially with Dark Souls 1, and it's more complicated than ever to understand. This game has 4 different endings that differ very little based on your choices in the game. In short, again, we got 4 big souls, 4 big bosses, most important boss souls in the game to acquire, and one only, let's call him main villain, looking at you, Pontiff Sullivan, who corrupted those 4 and wreaked havoc in the world of Lothric. We play as Unkindled, who is awakened from its grave, and our main goal here is to put those 4 big bosses back in their throne chairs to link the fire again. The cycle must continue in Dark Souls as always. A lot of questions from Dark Souls 1 are answered in Dark Souls 3, and yes, there is more clarity to Dark Souls franchise within Dark Souls 3. To talk about Dark Souls 3's story would take a lot of time, and it totally deserves a video on its own. Story is absolutely amazing, very well presented, and I enjoyed asking questions and reading item descriptions in both of my playthroughs. 10 out of 10, cause this type of Souls-like storytelling brought something new to the table, and it's still very, very good in Dark Souls 3. Maps and graphics as the next section. We got 22 different maps with 4 to 8 bonfires in each of those. Locations in Dark Souls offer great variety, from peacefulness of the Firelink Shrine, great architecture of Lothric City, catacombs and swamps, to snowy areas and absolutely astounding Irithil and Enorlondo architecture. I don't know what I liked more, to be honest here. Everything in Dark Souls 3 is absolutely a joy for your eyes. Graphics are beautiful. Basically, you can enter every building, cathedral and castle that you can see around you, no matter how far it is. 10 out of 10 seems fair to me. There are games with better graphics than Dark Souls for sure, but Dark Souls 3 has a special charm on its own when we talk about graphics. So 10 out of 10 for maps and graphics. Now the next section, bugs, glitches, and multiplayer. Well, let me put it this way. It can really be a mess. You can check some of those funny bugs and glitches on my YouTube channel too. I had more than 100 bugs and glitches in both playthroughs. Hitboxes are also a bit questionable, but I didn't have one single crash in more than 135 hours. I know that a lot of people had problems with crashes and game optimization, but I didn't. I also added a multiplayer to this section because of the very good reason. Tremendous amounts of hackers, a lot of lagging, totally unbalanced multiplayer, and new features like 1-on-4 fights are a constant in Dark Souls 3. I don't want to include PvP in gameplay section, and it's best to leave it here, play the game offline, and enjoy the single player campaign. Fuck the multiplayer. It's completely out of balance. 2 out of 10 considering the amount of glitches and bugs, game optimization, and a PvP mess up. So only 2 out of 10 for bugs, glitches, and multiplayer. We got game time as the next section. 2 playthroughs took me exactly 135 hours. Quite solid, I say. My second playthrough was with both DLCs, and it took me exactly 38 hours to finish the game without rushing, or better to say, I turned every bloody rock and discovered every secret that this game has to offer. It's a great time for this section RPG, but New Game Plus is a complete mess. Nothing new is added, and again, Dark Souls 2 was way much better in New Game Plus than Dark Souls 3 is. Complete, utter bullshit in New Game Plus. Nothing has changed from the regular game. Absolutely nothing. Maybe rings +1, their versions +1, but that's about it. I'm giving the section game time an 8 out of 10. What else? Game difficulty. That's the next section. Well, Souls franchise is famous for its amazing die and learn and get better difficulty, and they delivered it here again. 10 out of 10 without much talking. It provides challenge, and I love that. They did this part well. Gameplay for the next section, most important part in Dark Souls, especially for Dark Souls. I'm talking only of a single player campaign here, and I'll be very short in gameplay. From the very start, when you face Gundyr or Gundyr, whatever you like to call the boss, you will get hooked on the game because it runs fucking smooth in those boss fights. You are slower than in Bloodborne, but bosses are faster than ever before. You will admire Firelink Shrine, and when you open the first door in High Wall of Lothric for the very first time, you will be in a complete shock of how beautiful this game actually is. Tons of armors, trinkets, and weapons, and a lot of variety too. Great world design and a lot of shortcuts and mysteries await you. I like to think of Dark Souls 3, if I compare Dark Souls 3 to its older brothers, that it's Dark Souls again, but this time on steroids. It's faster, better, smoother, and hard as hell. You will die, and you will die a lot, rage, laugh, and what's most important, you will feel the progress when you kill a boss. You will feel rewarded again. Immersion is great, in other words. 9 out of 10 for gameplay for only one reason. 90% of what Dark Souls 3 has to offer is already seen by its older brothers. The cycle never ends in Dark Souls indeed. Not in the game world, and for sure not in developers from Software's world. Enemies and NPCs and bosses as the next section. Astounding amount of different enemies and monstrosities with their own unique moves and brains. Solid AI, very solid. NPCs are a very important part of this game too, because they will give you a lot of useful information if you learn how to read between their lines. And most important part here are, of course, boss fights. Boss fights. Some are complete disaster and failure, way too easy, and some are amazingly stupid how hard they are. And I'm looking at Midir, for example, from the Ringed City DLC. But most of those hard bosses are optional boss fights. And of course, there are some brilliant bosses like Pontiff Sullivan, Sister Fried, Champion Gundir, and so on. In short, we have exactly 25 boss fights, and they all have 2 to 3 different states or stages, which will trigger when you reduce them to half of their HP, or when you kill them they revive with full health and you need to do it again, but this time they will be stronger. One little note, they at least look amazing, all of them. Volnir was, I don't know, he looked freaking amazing in the dark hole in the abyss. 8 out of 10 for enemies, NPCs, and bosses. For this section, 8 out of 10. I really feel that the bosses are starting to repeat from previous franchises. Leveling and itemization for the next section. Yeah, there is no poise in Dark Souls 3. What that actually means? Well, with a bunch of different classes, from a regular warrior and knight class to sorcerer, pyro, deprived, and clerics, it actually doesn't matter what you choose. Dexterity and strength builds are the most powerful builds, and magic, miracles, and pyromancies suck in these Dark Souls. I mean in Dark Souls 3. It's a painful trade-off from Bloodborne, unfortunately. Magic, miracles, pyromancy suffered because the game is faster and the inventory is still way too slow. Maybe if the game was only for a PC it would be faster, but with those controls it's a downgrade. No poise means that playing with a tank build, for example, with a tanky armor, like Havel's armor is completely useless. You will only die more instead of otherwise, because you're slower. Very simple. You pick a class, go full damage, and burst your enemies out, and be first to do it, and learn how to roll and evade along the way. You kill or you're killed. There is no defense, or let's say it's very bad balanced in Dark Souls 3. Forget about shields. Now what else? Again, you level up with souls that enemies and bosses drop on their deaths. All of those upgrades for your weapons and all leveling will be done in the main hub, or better to say at the Firelink Shrine. You noticed I said weapons only. Yes, weapons only. Again, a downgrade from previous parts. You can't upgrade your armor, pants, gloves, helmets. So what the fuck is that from software? Again, a Bloodborne mess up in Dark Souls 3, and this time with itemization and upgrades. So, leveling and itemization will get a 6 out of 10, because astounding amount of gear will serve only for the looks and nothing else. So fuck it. Next section, music and sound. Great sound effects. From enemies, explosions to bass roars and screams, everything sounds unique. And there are 25 bosses and over 100 different enemies. Now imagine if they all sound unique, how good the sound effects are. Music, on the other hand, is not that, how to call it, memorable as it was Majula's theme in Dark Souls 2 or epic music from Dark Souls 1. NPCs are all very well voice covered though. 9 out of 10 for music and sound for Dark Souls 3. So now we have a conclusion with 9 different sections. We have 72 points exactly and overall score of exactly 8 out of 10. What went wrong? The game transfers from pure brilliance to some very annoying bugs, stupid and unbalanced, full of hackers, PvP, and plus the downgraded itemization system. I don't know, maybe I've expected more, way much more from Dark Souls 3. Maybe that's why I'm so harsh on the rates. I wanted this game to be one of the best ever, but it failed. It is still a great game and one of the best games for 2016, or when we had those DLCs 2017. But fuck it, I want it to be harder, longer, and with way much better New Game Plus, cause New Game Plus is a disaster. I'm a fan of Dark Souls franchise, and it hurts me to say that I even liked Dark Souls 2 more than Dark Souls 3. Dark Souls 3 is still a very beautiful and gorgeous game, but it's a big downgrade from Dark Souls 1 and even from Dark Souls 2. It's a Bloodborne, I don't know, like it's a mix between Demon Souls, Bloodborne, and Dark Souls, but all the good things from Dark Souls 1 are not here. That's it. That's the review in short. I could speak about Dark Souls 3 for the next 3 hours. There's a lot of detail in Dark Souls 3 for every aspect, for every segment. But I want to be as shortest here as I can. Thank you all for watching, people, and I'll see you on the next one.